Trump was able to go after DEI. He was able to go after a lot of, and it's continuing. We don't know yet where it will end. It is interesting that he went after Middle East studies, South Asian, and Africana. Now, I recognize they're all part of one department because he could have separated them out. It's growing, slowly but surely. The problem is, and this is not going to be a popular thing to say, it was an easy target because they alienated so many people with the idiocy that was being taught in those departments by half-baked morons. It alienated so many people. I talked to students. What went on in these classes, there was no room for dissent. There was a party line. People were terrorized to say anything critical of the woke agenda. And so there was a ready constituency when they went after it. Now, I will not give approbation to how it's being done. It should have been done democratically by people who had the moral wherewithal to say, this is nonsense, what's being taught. This is not even being taught in any meaningful sense of the word taught, because to teach is supposed to invigorate and enliven your mind, not deaden it with slogans. So slogans hollow, content, intellectually contentless slogans. So it was an easy target. There's very little support except among the woke apparatchiks. There's very little support on the college campus for those programs. I talked to the students, and there was something else so hypocritical about it. If you go to, I have to be careful here because I have a job right now, and I don't want to jeopardize the job. So I'm going to speak in more generic terms because I've taught at several places. I'm an itinerant, the beggar can't be chooser category. And I don't do it for the salary because I don't get paid. I get paid next to nothing. Literally next to nothing. But if you look at the course offerings in the English departments, if you look at the course offerings in the philosophy department, this is not English. That you have to look very hard. I'm being literal because I am a mentor to several students who I want to see succeed. And I want them to take substantive courses. You have to look very hard to find a course on Shakespeare in the English department.
It's no longer required anywhere.
Forget about, I'm talking even as a non-requirement. You have to look very hard. You have to look very hard for anything in many philosophy departments except Heidegger, Foucault, and Nietzsche. Their entire departments are just Heidegger, Foucault, and Nietzsche. And some of them will throw in Carl Schmitt. This is not philosophy. So why do I say it's hypocritical? Because where the liberal elites send their children, beginning in grade school, they're reading the classics. They're reading the classics. And then what happens? By some miracle, a person from City University gets into a top law school. And then they walk into class, and students start making references to Shakespeare and Dostoevsky and and that was in Dickens. And then they start talking about, Kant, Kant's critique of pure. And then the students are totally, the ones from City College, their egos are totally shattered. And so they're just being groomed to fail. So it's so hypocritical. They are all woke for everybody else, but they're not woke for themselves. By the way, I know this is a complete tangent, but if you look at the recent affirmative action decision, the students for fair admission, students for fair admissions, the one where the court overthrew affirmative action, I found it really interesting that Gorsuch, in his concurring opinion, he mentioned the fact that all these woke people, these woke liberals, they're all for affirmative action on the principle of merit, on the principle of giving minorities a chance. So they say this levels the playing field. Affirmative action levels the playing field. But they have next to nothing to say for affirmative action for rich white people in terms of legacies. If you were consistent, you would also call for the abolition of the legacies. There's very little on that. In this recent decision, the only dissent, Sotomayor, she mentioned in passing the legacy issue. Everybody getting in because their parents, like the way Jared Kushner, that dunderhead, got into Harvard, because that year, Jared Kushner's father gave Harvard $2.5 million. That's the only reason he got in. He's a complete moron. So the hypocrisy, they're always protecting themselves. So for their students, of course they're going to read Shakespeare. When I went to public middle school, we were reading Julius Caesar in 7th grade. That was just a standard for the curriculum. We were reading Edgar Allan Poe in 7th. I remember the teacher, Miss Silverstein. I remember her. I remember we read it in 7th and 8th grade. Already we were reading it. I'll give you an example. The other day I'm walking in the street, there's a young man, we got to talking, African-American or Caribbean-American, I can't remember right now. I said, what's your best subject in school? He was a high school sophomore. Okay. What's your best subject in school? Or junior? He said, English. I said, great. He said, I'm an AP English. I said, oh, AP English. What do you read? What books have you read? Remember, we're talking about February. The school year begins in September. He said, we haven't read any books. We haven't read any books. That's our public high schools. Is that going to happen to the liberal elite, the woke?
What were they doing instead of reading books?
I have no, he mentioned they read a few poems. Do you know what AP is? I'm not sure of advanced placement. It means you're supposed to be going at a very rapid pace in reading. So it was not just that the wokeness was such an easy target because so many people were alienated from the woke apparatchiks who were not very bright or ventured into fields where they knew nothing. I listened to one of your interviews with another person who started to refer.
Who was this person?
I won't say.
Okay.
Somebody will have to go through all your interviews to find a person who started to speak about Husserl's contributions to mathematics. And I'm thinking to myself, what does this person know about mathematics? A little humility. So it wasn't just the incompetence, it was the hypocrisy. Because the actual students, okay, there are a handful of people who love these classes. It gives them a chance to vent. But a large number found it really oppressive. This, we used to call it, it was a phrase coined by the left in self-criticism, self-mockery, what we used to call political correctness. It was a sledgehammer to the brain. They didn't like it. So it was an easy target for Trump. One person wrote to me, one good thing from Trump, it's bye-bye DEI. I think it's regrettable. And as I said, I wish it came from within, that it should have come democratically from within the university, because I think the principle of academic freedom, there is a certain haughtiness and snootiness to it, because the basic principle of academic freedom is only we are competent to judge whether a prospective faculty or a current faculty has the competence to belong in academia. Well, that makes perfect sense for physics. Why should some legislature from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, decide who is going to be in the physics department? That doesn't make any sense. Why should any cleric decide who is going to be in the biology department? And that was the initial impetus behind academic freedom, the notion that only the members of the profession are competent to judge who should and shouldn't teach and speak. And as I said, there's an undercurrent of snootiness there, but basically it makes sense, at least in the natural sciences, it makes sense. So I do believe that principle should be upheld, it should be preserved, and it shouldn't be Mr. Trump or Mr. Vance because of personal vendettas or because it's popular. The egghead, what we used to call the eggheads or the pointy heads, it's very easy to go after them. It resonates.